Welcome back to Bourbon Barrel Talk. I'm your host, Scott Minton. Today we're down in the old Hatfield Bourbon Bunker, and we are drinking some OC Oak Carter American Whiskey Batch Mother Truckin' 10.
You back here again, huh?
I know.
You couldn't stay away.
I couldn't. I don't know why.
Almost my first visit.
This is your first visit to the old Hatfield Bunker.
Oh, yeah.
So we got some Oak Carter, the American Whiskey Batch 10. What's the proof on this, Mo?
It's 131.8.
131.8.
Is there a better blender in the business?
Man, it'd be hard to you'd be hard pressed to pick one.
No, everything they put out is just fantastic, and when I got this bottle, I was very excited.
Yeah, no, I bought probably maybe 3 or 4 Oak Carters in the last couple of months, and I already crushed through one, and I'm getting ready to open another one, and it's just, the problem is that they do kick the pocketbook a little hard.
Didn't you get one for a pretty good price?
Oh, dude, I got one for like $70 in the West End. Dude had no idea. They just had it priced wrong.
Somebody lucked in.
I laughed. I even texted Booth. Booth was like one of the little manager dudes that runs the little private room that Oak Carter has above the little speakeasy, and I told him, and he's like, dude, he goes, they had no idea. I was like, they did not have any idea. So.
Which one did you end up getting?
It was one of the 12-year-old single barrels or 13-year-old single barrels. I mean, that thing had to be like $250, $275 regular price, and I got it for like $70.
Yeah, it was a little more squat bottle.
It's
not the normal one.
It was the original bottle shape that they had, because I know they did have problems getting glass, so that's one of the reasons they changed to it. And honestly,
I like
from
this
the
bottle
naked,
a little bit more.
I don't think you could really tell the difference unless you put them side by side. Like, I think most people. I think if you just saw an Oak Carter on the shelf, you wouldn't know if it was the first iteration of their bottle or the second iteration. That would be my best guess.
Yeah.
Most people couldn't. Maybe you, because you've seen a lot more of them than some other people. But
people have had them on shelves.
Do they have any distinct flavors? Do they usually go after certain profiles?
So, I mean, with me, from what I gathered from the conversations that I've had with Mark and Sherry over the time, I think they do a lot of, they do a ton of MGP, right? Like, they love MGP, and Mark loves high corn. So they do a lot of blending and things like that with 99.1 corn products. So basically, it's corn bourbon, but it's bourbon, and it's aged, and then they'll blend that with like the 21% or the 36% rise and get the sweetness that they want from that 99.1. And then run it that way. And then sometimes they'll double oak some stuff. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll blend out stuff. But they're probably one of the best blenders, if not the best blenders in the business.
I've seen 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old single barrels. Are they usually focused on the older stuff?
For the most part. I think a lot of their small batch blends are probably between 7 and 9-year-old blends. So I mean, they're not young by any stretch of the imagination. But I think their single barrels, I don't think they've got one out there that's less than 10 or 12 years old.
I don't think I've ever seen one.
So I don't know. So has this one got an age statement on it at all, or is it just the American whiskey?
Just the straight American whiskey, barrel strength.
And you said it's batch 10.
Yep.
So if I'm going off of vague memory. I think I talked to Mark a little bit about this one. I think this is a blend of like 12 and 13-year-old barrels.
Okay. Yep. And what's crazy about that is it's 131 proof. You don't smell a lick of alcohol on the nose. I
mean, it's super sweet. It's subtle. It's got some nice like caramel notes. It's got some nice tobacco, a little bit of leather.
There's 2,621 bottles.
2,621. So that's a fairly decent sized batch. Now, granted, American whiskey, there's not as much angel share because it's not a new barrel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but still, I mean, you got to figure for stuff that's that old, they're probably getting max 160, 175 out of a barrel. So 175, 25, 2,600. I mean, that's a decent chunk of barrels.
You're talking
13, 14 barrels.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
That's a lot of blending if you think about it.
It is. Dude, it's a science. I mean, that's the one thing, like, as I've been, contemplating starting our own label and things like that, is like, how am I going to do it blending? Single barrels are easy, right? You bring people in, you let them try it. They get to pick the one they like, whether I like it or not. Right, it's something whether you like it. There's 6 dudes that are coming in and they're trying to barrel and they're trying to decide. But when you blend something, there's some magic to that, right? You got to pick the right rye spice with the right sweetness. You got to pick the right, like if something's missing like a little bit of that like brown sugar, or something's missing that leather that you like, or like something like that. You're grabbing something from another barrel and saying, hey, I think this is what's gonna give me that mix.
Well, especially when you're going, saying 13 barrels, because you could have one that could just throw everything off. So then you got to reblend everything with a different barrel, because that went through everything shitting back.
Yeah, for sure. So there's definitely a science in that.
And I'm wondering, if sometimes when they have larger batches, that may be the case. They're like, oh, we got 10 barrels. This is good, but let's go ahead and add this one more barrel. And you're like, oh, that did not help. Let's go ahead and add another one. Made it a little bit better. Let me add one more and go through it to the point where they...
I don't think they do that. I think the way that a lot of those blenders work is they'll take like basically a 750 out of each barrel or like a 375, and then they'll just start dropping like 100 milliliters of each
If
one
that.
Oh, really?
into one big bottle, and then they'll get to the point where they've got, hey, this, and that way they know exactly what they're working with. Or they might be even, like Carl said, they might even be inputting 25 milliliters.
Got it.
And that way they get a true blend of those. They let it sit in that glass bottle or glass jar or whatever, and then they come back and try it.
Blend it one day, then try it the next.
Yeah, probably let it sit longer than that. Probably let it sit
Yeah.
3 or 4 days. They really want the flavors to
mix
marry.
up, yeah.
Probably shaking it, let it rest in it, shaking it, resting it, shaking it, resting it, opening it up, closing it, letting some air get to it.
Now, we've done a couple podcasts. How many? 2 or 3 you've done? I've been a part of 2 of them.
I think we've done 4 with Mark and Sherry now.
And, I mean, they're some of the most fun people to be around as well. So, I mean, they sit around and really have a passion for whiskey and wine and things like that.
Oh, absolutely. And they cut loose, man. They like to have a good time.
I could see them when they get to a taste point that they like, whatever the barrels are at, I think they probably stop at that point.
No, I would say that's probably the case. I will say, though, their ryes, man, like their ryes, they really, really work hard on, I feel like. Because I don't think either one of them are big rye drinkers. I think they're both more like in that high corn area. So I think whenever they're going through their ryes, that's a labor of love. Like they're really, really diving deep into those.
I'd say I don't see as many of the ryes as I do the whiskeys, the bourbons.
I think they release probably maybe 2 ryes for every 5 or 6 bourbons and American whiskeys. I mean, so it's a much less.
So you've had a couple drinks, and before this pour today, do you feel any heat, anything, or is it just pure smooth to you?
No, it's super smooth. There is some heat to it. I mean, it's American whiskey. It's 130 proof, right? But for me, it's all like in that mid, like what I would say is the side of my tongues, or the side of my tongue, and the side of my cheeks. Like that's where the heat comes in. The finish is super smooth. It's super sweet. It's got those nice like heavy corn notes. It's got that really, really good tobacco notes. It's got some nice undertones. The fruit in there is like a really, really delicate fruit. So, I mean, I think these things are delicious, these American whiskeys.
I probably got a weird palate right now, but it reminds me of like at the very front when you first try it, like a maple bacon.
Maple bacon, really?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at the very...
So you get like a salty note?
Not really the salty part, but
just more like the fatty...
sugary
okay,
part.
I could get a little bit of that.
But this bottle has a very long finish for me.
Oh, it does.
I can still feel it even though I took a sip 45 seconds ago.
Yeah. This is probably one of the first bottles I've actually felt it below the collarbone in a long time. For me.
I don't know that it's going below the collarbone, though. I mean,
well, I'm saying for me.
Yeah, for you, yeah. Do you think it's going below the collarbone?
Certainly, yeah.
See, I don't think it's that hot. But I warmed up a lot more than you all did.
Yeah, I've had a glass of 101, so...
I pre-gamed just a little bit more than you all did today.
But it's super sweet. Really, there's no spice really on the front, but it's all in the mid to back.
Well, it's American whiskey, so it's 99.1. So, I mean, it's all corn. It's high corn porn.
I'm not mad, let's call it that.
No, absolutely. It's super sweet.
Imagination.
It's so sweet. It's got some nice delicate notes to it, though.
Out of everything you've ever tried with Old Carter, what has been your favorite?
Oh, God.
That 27 year?
27 year was delicious. It really was. But I'll be honest with you, batch 5 was fantastic.
I remember that. That was the one that we tried.
Yeah, the very first podcast. 4 and 5 we fought over at first, and the more I drank 5, because we got Jasnoff ended up getting a bottle of 5, and we ended up drinking it one night. Me, him, and a couple of guys at his house. And man, the more I drank 5, I mean 5 was just a fantastic bottle. That batch 5 of the bourbon, and then batch 9 or 10 of the bourbon was almost identical. And then they just released, I think it was like 13 or 14 that just came out not that long ago, another solid one that was very similar to like batch 4 and 5.
So if somebody has a 5 that they haven't opened, you'd be interested?
Man, not at the price point they're paying for them, man. Anybody knows me. Anybody knows me. I'm not spending more than probably $300 on a bottle, and those things I think secondary now are hitting $500-600.
Oh wow!
Well, you could probably find something to trade for it. Because you do have
Oh,
a few things.
I have traders, but then you get into the whole like trading this versus that. Yeah, I mean it's a possibility, but I do batch 5's the bee's knees for sure. It's very good, but like I said, 9 and 10 were solid. 14 was good. I mean, I can honestly say of all the old Carters, the only one I've ever tried that I was not a massive fan of, or at least a really good fan of, was one of the Kentucky bourbons that they released, or a Kentucky whiskey. It was a Kentucky whiskey. Mm-hmm. It tasted like floral. I mean, it was the most floral thing I've drank in forever. And I want to say it was like maybe Kentucky whiskey #1 or
one of the early ones.
It was one of the super early ones. And I know Sherry was a massive fan of that one. But it was just so much floral. Like when I drank it, it was like dandelion and violet and stuff. I mean, it was super floral.
But that floral note's probably coming from they're still early on into the whiskey, bourbon, and all that, and they're just now at that point just coming from the wine. So that floral note may be relevant to their wine taste.
So they'd already released a lot of stuff by then. I mean, that was already probably by their fifth. I think it was the same day we tried the batch 5 of the bourbon. I want to say it was the same day that they did the Kentucky. I'd have to go back and look at my pictures, but I could probably tell you exactly when it was. But I just remember like it just being super, super floral, and it's the only one that I've ever drank that I was like.
Actually, sounds interesting to try. Nothing else.
Have you? I know you've been to their tasting room up there.
I have.
What do you think about that?
It's nice.
How many bottles are in that room itself?
So the funny thing is, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of bottles, but I mean, I think there's like 250 cases in there, and I mean, there's some of those that have 10, 12 bottles in them. You know, it's a different experience. The cool thing is, I mean, I've gotten to know Mark and Sherry over the years, and then if I ever really need something, or if I've got to figure out or if I have clients in town and I need to entertain, I can call Booth, or I can call Mark, and they've always been so gracious about just like, hey, come on over, bring them in, we'll introduce them to Old Carter, and it gives you a really unique experience in that process.
But you've also been able to go over there and help out a little bit, right?
Oh yeah, I've definitely bottled more than my fair share of Old Carter bottles.
The perks.
Well, you get to drink while
that's what I mean. The perks.
You get to drink while you're bottling. You know,
you're sampling.
We don't drink before noon. That's the only golden rule that we try to observe the noon rule. But outside of that, we definitely have had a few pours while we're bottling some fine Old Carter whiskey.
Hey,
well, this is one of my favorite bottles. So I'm glad we got to go ahead and review it.
No, 100%. So.
We're not
reviewing it against anything, but of the American whiskeys you've had, where do you rate this one? Is it a top 5? Is it a?
Oh, certainly. Of Old Carter or just in general?
Old Carter. Yeah. I mean, how many American whiskeys have you had outside of Old Carter?
The Mictors and things like that. But
okay.
I think
that's a totally different monster, right?
Sure,
it's not barrel strength.
No, but this has been probably top 2.
Top 2.
Yeah.
All right. How about you, Carl?
Probably right with him in top 2.
Top 2?
Because there's not too many more I can attest to.
Yeah. Man, I'd say it's definitely top 5, but I've had a lot more of them than you guys have. I don't know if it's top 2 or not, but it's definitely top 5. This is a solid pour.
And this being a batch versus where most of mine, they get to this proof or higher, are all single barrels.
Right.
So there was some hot stuff in this batch.
Yeah, but then again, like I said, it's American whiskey. It's not bourbon. It's not your standard bourbon. It's not your standard, small batch that they usually do. I will say that's the one big thing I'm a massive fan with Old Carter. It's always uncut, unfiltered.
Oh, yeah.
Always barrel strength.
Yeah.
Like they've never released anything that was 100 proof. They've never released anything that was 90 proof.
Well, their little label up here underneath the small batch says, never filtered, never cut.
Yep.
But I can appreciate that.
No, 100% I can.
But don't get me wrong. There's some of your favorite bottles that you ever want to try are 107 proof, 100 proof, 102.
Oh, no, absolutely. There are fantastic pours out there that are in that 95 to 110 proof range. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I don't think cutting them a little bit sometimes can actually benefit.
Some of my favorite OCs are 117. I mean, but they've not been cut, right? So I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you have to enjoy what you're drinking as what it is and how they intended it to be drank. So that's the way I look at it. You know, that's the reason I've been a single barrel snob for quite a while. Because I think that when you get something that's barrel strength, you're getting it as they intended it to be drank when they made it. Now, that being said, a lot more places didn't start releasing barrel strength until later on, and they started doing a lot of 90 and 100 proof stuff. So,
yeah, but I'm not a single barrel snob like you. I don't mind a lot of stuff that's shelfers 95 to 100 proof, 107 proof. Weller 107 is just a great bottle. But I can appreciate what they do.
No, 100%. Carl?
I'm in love with it, honestly.
Fair enough.
I don't get to try too many old Carters out there.
You're right. Hey, listen, they're not as prevalent in our area, you know, especially southern Indiana. I mean, you got to go to Louisville to get them typically. So, well, if you want to find us, you can find Bourbon Barrel Talk on Facebook, Instagram, or the X. I guess it's called X now, right?
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
X. That's what they're calling it.
X. You know.
What is it when you tweet? So it's X'd.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna
I'm
start.
guessing,
I'm gonna start
yeah.
Xing. I'm gonna start Xing people when I'm Xing.
Doesn't sound right.
So anyway, if you want to find us on Facebook, Instagram, or the X, you can do that. You can also email us at bourbonbarreltalk@gmail.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button whenever you're listening to our episodes. Share an episode. That's one of my favorite things to do. When I see somebody that shares an episode and they tag old J. Scott Minton and they say, "Hey, Scott, we love your shit. This is what we're doing. Tag us. Tag me. Tag me. I don't even care if you tag Bourbon Barrel Talk. Tag Scott Minton." And I'll be listening. I'll be appreciating it. We greatly appreciate it for you listening to our episodes as we release them out. This is Scott, Carl, and Toby signing off. Peace.
See ya.